It powered America's farms, pulled broken dreams across highways, and outlasted engines that cost 10 times more. Yet hidden deep inside its block of cast iron was a racing pedigree so powerful that Ford itself tried to keep it under wraps. This is the untold story of the Ford 300 Inline-Six, the engine mechanics called God's anvil, and why so many others feared it. The saga of the Ford 300 doesn't begin on a racetrack, but in the trenches of everyday America. By 1964, Ford needed a new motor for its booming F-Series trucks. What they wanted was not just power, but brute reliability, something simple enough to run on poor fuel, strong enough to pull tree stumps, and tough enough to survive whatever abuse farmers and tradesmen threw at it. The assignment went to engineer Chase Morsey Jr. and his team at Ford's Advanced Engine Division. Their mission was clear: build an engine that would never quit. Back in the late 1940s and early 1950s, as America recovered from World War II, the demand for bigger and stronger vehicles exploded. Ford's flathead V8s were beloved, but for work duty, they weren't always efficient or cost-friendly. Straight-six engines, with their inherent balance and smoothness, offered a better alternative. Ford already had smaller inline-sixes, but customers wanted something larger and more capable. By the early 1960s, heavier trucks and vans were becoming common, and Ford engineers knew it was time to scale up. The first attempt was the 240 cubic inch six, but it was the 300, released in 1965, that would become legendary. This engine wasn't just a bored-out version of its predecessors. It was redesigned from the ground up, a long 4-inch stroke for immense torque, a rugged block with 7 main bearings and a forged steel crankshaft that could take punishment most V8s couldn't endure. Ford slotted the 300 into everything from F-Series pickups to industrial machines, and soon mechanics everywhere realized what they had. It was reliable, it was cheap to maintain, and it could run for decades with only basic care. Farmers, builders, truckers, all came to depend on it. They nicknamed it the million-mile motor and the Big Six, and for 25 years, it anchored Ford's truck reputation. But while Ford marketed the 300 as a work engine, in garages across America, a quiet rebellion was taking shape. Hot rodders began to see its hidden potential. Legendary NASCAR crew chief Bud Moore once remarked, "We called it the million-mile motor. For racers, bolting performance parts onto a farm truck engine was the ultimate act of defiance." Companies like Clifford Performance and Offenhauser began producing rare, expensive intake manifolds that allowed 2 4-barrel carburetors to sit atop the long six. These setups were so unusual on an inline engine that finding one felt like striking gold. Why do it? Because airflow is everything. The stock 1- and 2-barrel carbs strangled the 300 at higher RPMs. With dual quads feeding 3 cylinders apiece, the engine could finally breathe, and suddenly this humble truck motor started making serious horsepower. But it wasn't as simple as bolting on carbs. Builders had to choose the right manifold, balance the airflow, synchronize the carburetors, and tune the jetting. Most used smaller 4-barrels in the 390 to 450 CFM range to keep drivability smooth. When paired with a hotter camshaft, free-flowing headers, and stronger ignition, the 300 became a genuine performance engine while keeping its tractor-like torque. Pop the hood on a dual-quad Ford 6 and crowds would gather. It was mechanical artwork, chrome carbs gleaming on a long, narrow block. It was different, daring, and unforgettable. Dick Brandon, SCCA rally champion in 1978, put it best. The torque hit you like a sledgehammer off idle. You could feel every cubic inch working. Despite being born for trucks, the 300 made surprising appearances on the racetrack. In the 1970s NASCAR late-model Sportsman Series, underdog teams discovered its torque gave them an edge on short tracks. While V8s spun their wheels, the 6 dug in and powered out of corners. Drag racers also took notice. Ohio George Montgomery, famous for his gasser builds, experimented with 300 blocks. Pulling competitors, too, leaned on the 6. Why blow up an expensive V8 when the 300 could take brutal abuse and keep running? As one puller, Dirty Dan Wilkins, said in 1978, "It made torque where you needed it and cost pennies to fix." To unlock the engine's full potential, tuners discovered 3 key upgrades. Camshaft. The stock cam was designed for smoothness, not power. Swap in a performance grind with more lift and duration, and suddenly the 300 could rev higher without losing its trademark torque. Headers. The factory exhaust was restrictive. Long tube headers let gases escape quickly, improving scavenging and complementing that dual quad intake. Ignition, more air and fuel, meant the stock ignition struggled. High-energy electronic systems ensured every cylinder fired hot and clean, even under heavy load. Together, these changes could boost horsepower by 50% or more, while keeping the engine's legendary low-end grunt intact. Yet, the very success of the 300 caused problems inside Ford. The V8 division saw it as a threat. According to retired engineer Frank Miller, by 1982, he and his team begged management to develop fuel injection for the 300. The response? Put it in a V8, whether out of politics or simple neglect, the Inline-Six never got the resources it deserved. By the mid-1980s, emissions rules choked its carbureted design, and power dropped to just 120 horsepower. Still, small shops refused to let it die. Builders like Leo Sanucci's 6-cylinder specialties kept experimenting, adding turbos, nitrous, and wild custom parts. One van he built reportedly ran the quarter-mile in the 12s. Whispers persist of a Ford Skunk Works project in the early 1990s. Codenamed Atlas, engineers reportedly tested a twin-turbo, fuel-injected version of the 300 designed to make over 400 pound-feet of torque for a new Super Duty truck line. But the project was killed in 1992, supposedly because it threatened the dominance of Ford's V8 lineup. By 1996, the 300 was officially retired. The reasons given were emissions and modernization. But for many, it felt like the end of an era. The Ford 300 Inline-Six wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud, but it was unkillable. Mechanics called it God's anvil because no matter how hard you struck it, it never cracked. It powered trucks, tractors, race cars, and pullers. It taught hot rodders the value of creativity. And it proved that sometimes the most legendary engines aren't the ones built for glory. They're the ones that never give up. The legend lives on in barns, shops, and car shows, where that long block still draws curious crowds. Because in the end, the Ford 300 isn't just an engine. It's a symbol of durability, ingenuity, and the power of the underdog. This is Paul from Rare Car Stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.